Good day to all of us. Good day to our diehard and loyal subscribers to this YouTube channel, Kuya Ig World. Uh, Today, I'm going to discuss a sample sheet program, and along the way, we'll try to we'll try to discuss some important lines in a particular program example, and I might as well sharing my thoughts on as far as logic and algorithm is concerned. Okay, and all statements that are actually involved in this particular programming problem. Uh, I already posted videos on this. Okay, and I hope that at the end of the day I will be able to share useful thoughts about programming, and eventually for the subscribers of our C programming language, you can use these techniques, and like I said, 2 years from now, 4 years from now, you'll become good programmers. I am gonna share my online notepad. Okay, so the problem says create a C program to make a simple calculator using switch case, right? So I can still remember that I have a video discussing about switch case, right? Take note that in C programming language, there are actually four, right? Conditional statements: simple if else, ladderized if, and nested if. The fifth one is this one, switch case. So in this particular programming problem, wherein we'll be creating simple calculator. When we say simple, it is actually a calculator that is capable of adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, right? So we'll be using switch case. And I have here enumerated the required knowledge for this particular problem. Number one is you have to be familiar with the C inputs and outputs statements. If you can remember, we have three inputs and output statements. We have printf and scanf. We have gets and puts, right? And we have get car and put car. Right? So I had discussed that already. And the next one, you have to be knowledgeable with C variables, right? In C variables, what's the rule? You have to start with a letter followed by a combination of letter, digit, and underscore, right? So C programming is a case sensitive programming language. And then be knowledgeable also with the data types. Data types refers to integer, character, float. So here, so if you're good enough in inputs and outputs, if you're good enough in variables, if you're good enough in data types, and if you know the behavior, the attitude of switch case statement, right? And if you know the loop statement, so there are four types of loop statement. We have for loop, while loop, do while loop, and nested for loop for. So if you're good in this, then you can create a simple calculator, right? So actually, I have a sample program in here. I intentionally put this one so as to save time and the data charge on your part, because I am sure and I believe that you're using you'll be using data for your internet connection. Okay, so again, we'll be creating simple calculator using switch case, and we'll be using along the way the input and output statements, variables, data types, and we'll be using loop also, right? So switch case, and along the way we'll be using if statement, right? So I'm going to share you today my online compiler. Actually, this is actually the program, same, right? This is just a I just I copy this one and paste to my online compiler. Okay, so this is our simple calculator. Okay, so if we are going to execute this program, right, we're going to click run command. This program will ask for how many numbers do you want to enter. Okay, so if you tend to compute for three numbers, so you can put three, right? And when you press enter key, you are then allowed to choose four selections: addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. Okay, one for addition, two for subtraction, three for multiplication, and four for division. Beyond this value, our program will display invalid entry. So if, for example, instead of clicking 1 to 4, you tend to click 5, or to supply 6 number, or 9 or 10, then it will display an invalid entry. Okay? So if, for example, we'll try to use addition. So when you click enter key, our program now is asking for three numbers. Where did we get this three? This is actually here. How many numbers do you want to enter? Right? So we will be adding three values. For example, 9, 8, and 7. So when you press enter key, sum is 24. So we added the three values. And here, menu comes out again, right? So when we are to choose, for example, multiplication, number 3, and when we press enter K, then our program will ask for three numbers. This is from here, 3, right? So when we say 6, 5, and 3, when we press enter K, mul is equal to 90, meaning the multiplied value of 6, 5, and 3 is 90, right? So if we are to choose 4, right, division, and we are going to input 7, 5, and 3, when we press enter K, the div value is 0.466667, right? So our program will kept on running and kept on asking for an option from 1 to 3 and 4. So that's how our simple program, simple calculator behaves. Okay, actually we can add another menu here. You can say 5 and we'll have exit. So if you want to do some break, if you want to exit from this program, then we'll have to issue 5. But as far as this example is concerned, we don't have an option yet, right? So we can stop this program from running by way of clicking stop command, right? So stop button. Now here, we'll try to explain, not actually the detailed line by line way of explaining the program, but those are actually important for this problem. Okay, so here I declared op. Op is for the operator, right? 1, 2, 3, and 4. 1 for addition, 2 for subtraction, 3 for multiplication, and 4 for division. Then I have here I, right? So we'll be using this one for our loop, okay? And N will be also using this one for when we are going to, if you can remember, our program asks for how many numbers do you want to enter. So whatever value that we are going to supply, that will be stored to our N. And num actually refers to the value supplied. Like for example, our program needs three values, and if we are going to input 9, 6, and 10, those numbers will be stored to num. So I have four integer variables, right? And I did use the input and output statement. Okay, I did display how many numbers do you want to enter, right? And then scanf n. So whatever values that you are going to supply, that will be stored to n. If you supply 5, then this program will ask for 5 values. So meaning you're good as you're trying to add, multiply, divide, or subtract 5 values, right? And look at this. This is important. I did use 4 and uh, giving no conditions, no initializations, and no updations, right? And I did have this curly bracket, and the partner is in here, right? So meaning uh, all these lines, are you following? All these lines are actually part of for loop. This is actually the loop body. So while this condition is true, perform all these things, right? So in this particular programming way, when you run this program, this is always true, meaning no chance in the world that that particular condition becomes false, right? So it's another technique. If you want to display a particular menu, right? You can use for then semicolon semicolon, and your program will always display that, right? So here, when I click run command, it goes through here how many numbers here. So when I say 4, when I press enter key, then this menu here is actually the result of this condition, right? It is always true, and there's no way for you to exit the program. So it's somewhat like an infinite loop. Okay? So it keeps on waiting from the user to supply value. It's either 1, 2, 3, or 4, or any values. So when you supply 7, for example, it's beyond the bound, then the program will display what? Entered invalid options. And then again and again, the program is displaying the menu. Why? Because of this line for it's always true. No chance of becoming false. And you can only exit this program by way of clicking the stop command in our C compiler, right? So another technique, okay? I hope you're following. If you want to display menus, if you're dealing with menus, then you can use the techniques, or you can use do while. Okay, I did mention in my previous video that do while handles or take cares with menus, because do while is you perform this loop body first prior to checking while this condition is true or false, right? So you tend to display, or instead of using do while, if you're inclined with for loops, like in my case, I love for loops, so you can use this line. Okay, now the next line is this one, print enter option. This is actually our menu. Okay, and y2 subtraction 3 goes down because of backslash n, right? Because of this backslash n. So that is why it goes down. So when we tend to run this program, okay, when we see 4, the reason why this one, right, and this one is on a different line is because of this backslash n, right? So here, scanf, then whatever value that you are going to supply, 1, 2, 3, or 4, that will be stored to OPT or operator, right? And then the value of this OPT will be checked and be used at switch case. Okay, so if your value stored in OPT is beyond the bound of 1 to 4, then our program will display invalid entry. Why? Look at this one. The curly bracket of switch is this, right? And this. Okay? So meaning if your OPT value is 5, so it cannot be 1, it can never be 2, right? 3 and 4. So if that is the case, all these conditions are false, then it goes down to the last one, which is the default statement. And the default statement says print entered invalid option, meaning if any of the case conditions are false, then display this one. And break means get out from the switch statement, exit. Are you following? Okay. Now here, this is a little bit tricky, but you can explore. After my discussion, copy and paste this problem, do the programming, include it in your online compiler, and do some scientist move, right? Be a scientist. Delete something and run. Edit something and run. Add something and run until you completely digest the logic of the program, okay? Plus my discussion today, so that's it. Now here, um, switch OPT, meaning check as to what is the value of OPT. And within my switch statement, another declaration. Okay? So I have here sum, right? Declared as an integer. Sub, mol, right? This sum is for the total addition. Sub is for the subtraction. Mol is for the multiplication. CNT, actually, this is the counter. I will be using this one as we go on with our discussion. And DD is for division. I separated this with another integer because when you tend to divide something, you'll be dealing with float value, right? Values with decimal places. Okay, so these are actually the variables that I will be needing along the way when I handle this switch statement, right? So here, if for example your supplied value and stored to OPT is 1, then this particular block here will become true and be performed. So if, for example, you tend to select addition, so this is the statement, right? Okay. So are you following? Now here, sum is equal to 0, right? This is actually an initialization. By the way, without supplying sum is equal to 0, by default, the value of all these things are actually zeros, right? So print enter percent numbers. So we'll be getting, we'll be using whatever's the value of in here, right? If you can remember, how many numbers do you want to enter? And this is in. So we'll be using this value. And here, I did use for loop statement. And if you can see, I tend to use I is equal to 0, I is less than n. So meaning if your n value here as to how many numbers do you want to add is 3, then this loop body will be performed 3 times because I did use n as my limit, right? And increase the value of I every time it loops. So the loop body is scanf. It will be asking for how many values. So in this particular example, okay, I use 4. So meaning when I click, when I click 1, right, for addition, the program will ask for 4 values because 4 here is actually the value of n, right? So here, so if we have this 4 as our in value, this loop body will be performed 4 times. So meaning our program will ask for the value of num. How many times? 4 times, right? Because we tend to limit our asking as to how much is the number of n. So if for example I put 2, when I press enter key, this 2 will be stored to num. Alright? And then here comes the formula. Sum is equal to sum plus num. Our sum is 0, right? Plus num, which is 2. When we press enter key or when our program execute, our sum now becomes 2. Because 0 plus 2 is 2 and that 2 will be stored to sum. and it loops again. How many times? 4 times, because our value of n is 4. When it loops, for example, please follow my screen. Uh, we give a value of 4. When we press enter k, this 4 will be stored to num, right? And then another formula, sum is equal to sum plus num. Our sum is how much? 2 plus num, which is 4. The present value of sum now is 6. Alright? And loops again. When it loops, our program will ask for another value. Say for example, we supplied 3. When we press enter k, this 3 will be stored to num, and then formula, sum is equal to sum plus num. Our sum is how much? 6 plus num, which is 3, meaning that's 9. 9 now is actually the new value of sum, and it loops again. This time our I is 4, right? Or you follow? 3. 3 because we started at 0. Right? So since 3, the condition is true. So perform again. Ask for another value. So for example, we give 2. We press enter k. That 2 is being stored to num, and then compute num or sum plus num. Our sum is 9 plus num, which is 2. That's 11. So it then displays sum is equal to 11 because our loop exists, right? Because I plus plus means our I is 4, and the condition is of course becomes false because 4 is not anymore less than 4, and it exits from the loop, and these lines will be performed. Sum is equal to whatever is the value of sum. Our sum is 11. Okay, so I hope you're getting my point, right? And the rest, right? So same logic, same algorithm. Okay. Now here, I just love to discuss some important lines in here. For example, when you are to select subtraction, okay, case 2, if this is true, then this will be performed. Okay. Now look at this. It will still ask for the number. So if our n is 4, then this loop body will be performed how many times? 4 times. Same with addition. Then why is it that we have some conditional statements in here? Why is it that we have this if and we use this counter is equal to 1? Listen. Uh, while we tend to ask for the value of num, okay, going back to addition, we ask for the num, and then all of a sudden we just try to add it up. But in here's under subtraction, when you ask for a num, we tend to ask first for the counter, right? So is counter equals to 1? Of course, because we initialize counter by 1. So meaning when we tend to run this program, this condition will always true. I'm sorry. Connection is lost. Okay. It's always true. So this formula will be performed. So what is this? Sub, meaning subtraction, right? Is equal to num minus sub. Our num is how much? If, for example, here, we'll try to run this program. We'll just limit our program to 3. Okay? When you press enter K, we'll try to select 2 for subtraction, right? And our program now is asking for value. So when we type 3, that 3 will be stored to num. And then here comes an if. So this condition is true because our counter is 1. So perform sub is equal to sub minus num minus sub. Our num is how much? 3, right? Minus sub, which is 0. So the new value of sub now is 3. Why is this so? This is to, this is to it's so technical, but look at this. The main reason why we have this condition is for the 0. What if your first value is 0, right? Okay, so in here, look at this. Our sub now is 3, right? And then else this will not be performed. Then counter CNT plus plus, meaning counter now becomes 2. And it goes back, right? Because this loop body will be performed how many times? 3 times, because we tend to select 3 in here. We supplied 3 value for n. So this loop body will be performed 3 times. On the second time, right? Our I is 1 because we started at 0. So scan it. It asks again for num, right? So for example, we will supply 4. When we press enter key, that 4 will be stored to num. Okay? Now the second time, we are asked if counter is equal to 1. Not anymore because of of this one, plus plus, counter plus plus. Our counter now is 2. So meaning this line will not be performed and perform this one. Look at this. Our sub is how much? 3, right? Minus num. Our num is 4, right? So 3 minus 4 is how much? Negative 1. Are you following? So the new value of sub now is negative 1. And it goes back again. When it goes back, I becomes how much? 2, right? So the value of I is 2, meaning the condition is still true. Perform the loop again. Scan F. So for example, we'll supply, let us say 5. When you press enter key, this 5 will be stored to num. And of course, this condition is false. Do not perform this line. Perform this else portion because the condition is false. Perform sub is equal to sub minus num. If you can remember, our sub was how much? Negative 1. Because 3 minus 4 is negative 1. Minus num, which is 5. So negative 1 minus 5 is how much? Negative 6. Because when you tend to subtract sign numbers, mentally change sa subtrahen. So negative 1 minus 5, that's negative 6. So when we press enter key in here, because the next time it loops, I is how much? I is 3. And since our n is 3 also, meaning that makes our condition false, so it will exit from the loop and eventually perform this line. So when we press enter key here, sub is equal to negative 6. And break, meaning exit from this case, and it goes back again to the menu, right? It goes back again to here. Are you following? Okay. So to make this video short, I would like to suggest you try to, you try to do the same. Look at this. In here under multiplication, right? So look at this one. If we choose 3 for multiplication, for example, right? And then our program needs for 3 values. Okay? So when we are going to supply 2, for example, and when we press enter K, I'm sorry. Wow. This connection is lost. I'm sorry. I have technical problem in here. I'm sorry. We'll try to run it again. So we need 3 values, right? And we'll try to choose multiplication 3. And when we supply 2, okay? I hope you're following. This 2 will be stored to num, right? And then here comes this condition. Oh, I'm sorry. 3, and we'll try 3, and we'll supply first 2. Now 2. This 2 will be stored to num, right? And what is the purpose of these conditions? By default, when you are to multiply, we are assuming that the first operand must always be 1. For example, when you have 2 times 1, that's 2, right? But if that's the reason why we initialize mul as 1, right? Now, what if somebody supplied 0? So we have to change the mole, right? Because in here, if you can see, the formula to add all, to multiply all the values, the three values is mole is equal to mole times num, right? So the logic in here is this conditions here addresses the chance when a particular user supply to a zero value, right? So we'll try to simulate to for you to understand. uh, this 2 will be stored to num, right? Now, this particular line try to us to check if num is equal to 0. Now, our num is 2. So, meaning this condition is false. So, never mind this one. So, mole is still 1, right? And else, multiply. So, mole is equal to mole times num. Our mole is how much? 1 times num, which is 2. The new value of mole now is how much? 2. And it goes back. How many times this loop statement perform the loop body? 3 times, because our n is 3, right? So this time when it loops, I is 1 because we started at 0. So I is lesser than 3. So perform again. Ask for another num. So for example, we will say 3. This 3 will be stored to num, and it check. Is num equal to 0? False. So if false, perform this one. So mole is equal to mole times num. Our mole was how much? 2, right? Times num, which is 3. The present value, the new value of mole now is 6. Are you following? Now, go back again. This time, I now is how much? 2. Still, the condition is true. Perform. What if? Because we need num. What if the user supplied 0? So when we press enter key, that 0 will be stored to num. Are you following? Okay? Are you following? Num. So, meaning this condition is true. Right? Because num is 0, which is equal to 0. So, what is then the formula? Mole is equal to 0. Right? Are you following? So, because the present value of mole is 0, it loops again. Else portion is not being performed because the condition is true. It loops again. When it loops, the value of I is 3, which is already false because our n is 3 also. So it will exit from the loop and perform this one. Printf, mole is, pila atong mole? How much is our mole? Our mole is 0, right? So when you press enter key, right, the value is 0, which is correct, right? 2 times 3 times 0 is 0, right? So this is the purpose of this if is, sometimes user tend to supply 0. And in multiplication, 0 plays a vital role. Even you have millions of values in here. When you tend to multiply that by 0, it goes back to 0, all in all. Right? So I hope I was able to explain the logic of the multiplication under symbol calculator, the subtraction, right? And here, look at this. Division. We are all aware that we cannot divide anything by 0. You can use your calculator, try to divide 2 by 0. It will not compute. Now, our program will always display, will always compute. So, if the scenario is this, if your divisor is 0, how is the behavior of our program? Our program will display 0 instead of empty. Our calculator, if you can see. I'll try to, I hope I can share this. This is my calculator, right? Okay. So, here. Right? You're following? Oh, I'm sorry. It's not visible. I'm sorry. But when you are going to multiply any number by 0, you cannot. So the purpose of this lines here is for the chance of supplying 0 as divisor, right? And look at this. If num is equal to 0, set your dv to 0. Similar with this one. If num is equal to 0, set your mole to 0. Take note, our mole is being initialized by 1 because by default, it should be 1 when you are to multiply something. No, same with div. If you are to divide something, you'll be assuming 1, right? But if in case the user supplied 2 or 0, then you have to, in no way, initialize dv by 0. And in any case, when your program exits, it will display whatever is the value of dv. So instead of displaying nothing, because you cannot divide anything by 0, right? Our simple calculator will just display 0, right? 2 divided by 0, in calculator, you cannot see anything. But in this particular program, our program will display 0. That's it. So this is the logic of these lines in here, right? So we'll try, right? We will try. We'll stop this one, okay? Uh, and we'll try to run it again, right? And in here, we'll supply 2. Meaning we have to divide two values. I will try to select 4. So, for example, 4, right? That's our value of num. Then the second is we want to divide it by 0. It cannot be. But when we press enter key, our calculator will display 0.000. Instead of displaying nothing, it will display just 0. Right? So, that's it. And why is it that we have a lot of digits in here? Because, if you can remember, right? Our dv or division is actually a float variable. It deals with decimals. Because when you are to divide something, it is quite impossible that you're not dealing with decimal places. Okay? So I hope I was able to explain this simple calculator program. I hope I was able to explain the logic of the condition statement in between the loop, right? Because that's normal when you are to multiply something, 0 plays a vital role. When you are to divide something, zeros plays a vital role. When you are to subtract something, negative or positive plays a vital role. And along the way, we have to address it by way of inserting some conditions, if conditions. Okay, so thank you so much for now. Subscribers, I would like to challenge you. You do the same, right? You try to have this program. I'd love to to show this one in here, please. Okay, print screen on this, right? And then here, print screen again for you to copy this program. Done. And then print screen again and do it, do the encoding and print screen again. Print screen, right? Print screen. I hope you're done. And then do some encoding under your online compiler. Okay. So I'm done with this video. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you click subscribe. Share this video to your friends, relatives, or wanting to learn programming. The best way to be good in programming is first learn C programming language. Okay. Thank you so much for now. God bless you. God bless us. God is always good.